Our scripture on this evening is 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. So often when you watch a television pageant, for example, a question is asked, what would you do to change the world? Given the fact that we live in an immoral society where pleasure seeking is at an all-time high and man's lewd and illicit behavior continues to run rampant, that is a most appropriate question to consider. Sometimes the question is asked, what would you do if you could change the world? What would you do if you were the president? What would you do if you were in charge of all of the nations of the world? The answers to those questions are designed to gauge where the person is and their ability to respond to such questions in a timely fashion with a sensible answer. Here is an idea that was given and in fact made a law back in ancient Rome. In 9 AD, the Roman Emperor Augustus implemented a tax, and the tax was on grown men who were not married. It was a marriage tax, or better yet, a singles tax, and the hope was that it would encourage men to get married, and the hope of men getting married was so that they would not be immoral. The idea behind this was that single men tend to indulge in pleasure seeking more and tend to be more immoral and participate in more illicit behavior. So by taxing them, Roman Emperor Augustus thought he would help men to be more moral and ultimately society to be more moral. If you think that is simply something in ancient times, then come to more recent history. In 19th century times, we continue to see this single tax imposed for the purpose of promoting morality and limiting immoral behavior, specifically among single men. The state of Michigan had a singles tax for men in the 19th century. In 1821, the state of Missouri enacted a law with the same type of tax. In 1921, the state of Montana, again in hopes of helping men to be more moral, implemented the singles tax. The state of California tried it in 1934, but it failed and was not able to be voted and signed into law in the state of California. How do you promote morality? How do you get people to act right, to think right, speak right, and live right? Sometimes we think that morality can be legislated. That's why people fight vehemently about their candidates, because there's some particular moral issue that their candidate or party stands for. While we need laws to regulate behavior, judicial decrees and executive orders go a long way. We must understand that hearts cannot be regulated by legislation. But God knows how to get our attention. When people go astray and get off the beaten path, God will cause things to happen around us and in our lives, not to hurt us, but in an effort to bring about a greater sense of morality. For instance, in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, beginning in verse 13, he says, "If I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Notice the emphasis here is God starts not with the government, not with the Gentiles, but he starts with those people who are called by his name. Have you ever thought that in all of the rigmarole that is going on in the world today, that God is trying to get the attention of the church first, though we may see a need for the entire world to heed his message, that perhaps God is trying to get our attention because we're supposed to be the salt of the earth. We're supposed to be the light of the world. There are 4 things mentioned that are designed to promote morality and righteous living. It is not a tax on a person based on their marital profile, but 4 things that are mentioned in this passage. Number 1, humility, learning to not think arrogantly and pridefully. Certainly a problem that many men and women struggle with today. He also mentions prayer. How often do we start praying when problems come? Have you ever thought that sometimes God allows us to be shaken so that he can get our attention? Then it says to seek his face. Many times people are so busy and so distracted by their personal pursuits in life and their desires for pleasure that they forget God. When church was in session, so to speak, or the doors of the church were open, symbolically speaking, how many people were still absent because they were too busy and too preoccupied with their personal agenda? Maybe God allowed this to happen because he wants us to seek his face. And then the 4th thing that is mentioned is turning from evil. If only we would see that the pleasures of sin are but temporary, that it's much better, much more enjoyable, and much more fulfilling to turn from evil and to live a life of righteousness. The favor of God exceeds any temporary pleasure that we might enjoy from sin. How would you make the world a better place, a more moral place? 2 things I can tell you that will not work: taxing people in hopes of getting their attention and helping them to focus on moral issues, and legislation both prove to be ineffective at changing morality. But when hearts change, morality can abound. Sometimes God allows things to happen because he wants us to be more humble. He wants us to pray more. He wants us to seek him, and he wants us to turn from evil. Remember this: those who will not be controlled by God will be ruled by tyrants. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister. We hope that you are blessed as we are reminded to seek our God in humility, prayer, and turning from evil.